Hey guys, this is Infinity Number What Ifs. I hope you are doing well. Please support to subscribe this channel to watching new interesting stories and to get all videos in real time. Please subscribe. So in this video, we will see what if Naruto owned Umbrella Corp. Here is short summary. Naruto Resident Evil crossover. His father would leave him pretty little words to inspire him. His mother on the other hand, had left an entire corporation spanning the elemental nations to him, giving him the tools to succeed in life and beyond. But before we start, if you want more stuff like this, then be sure to subscribe and like this video. And if possible, share this video with your friends. Now let's start the story. A groan could be heard from the individual that lay upon the bed as he slowly regained consciousness. The monk's first reaction was to wipe the sleep from his eyes so he could gain his bearings from his sleep-addled mind. Or he would have, if his wrists were not securely fastened to the bed. Snapping awake, the silver-haired man took note of his situation as best he could with the minuscule amount of light that came from the heart monitor to his left. Not only were his hands bound at the wrist to the bed he was on, but his entire body was as well. A groan in the corner of the darkened room alerted the man that he was not alone. "Anyone there?" he called out. "Mizuki," a familiar voice called out from the other side of the room. "Is that you?" "Yeah," the silver-haired Chunin replied. The sounds of some light struggling could be heard as he attempted to get his bindings loose. "What happened, Iruka?" "I don't know," the identified Iruka stated. "The last thing I remember was setting up a trap for that demon brat, then something hit me from behind and knocked me out." "Same," Mizuki grunted as he gave another hard tug at his bindings, before giving up with an exasperated sigh. "Where the hell are we?" Suddenly, light flooded the darkened room, nearly blinding the two occupants as the door slid open with a silent hiss. At the door, a slender feminine figure stood. "Ah, good, you're awake," she spoke with a melodic voice as the woman casually flicked on the lights, revealing herself to be none other than the Hyuga heiress herself. Though, instead of wearing her usual attire from the academy, she was now wearing a full-bodied purple and white suit that looked like it was ready for combat. Atop of that, she wore a simple white lab coat, with her ID badge clipped to the front, proudly displaying the company's logo. A simple vertical black oval, outlined by a yellow one. "Hi Hinata," Iruka sputtered at the sight of the young woman. The revealed young woman had dropped out of the Shinobi Academy a little over 3 years ago abruptly, along with fellow heiress Ino Yamanaka and one Naruto Uzumaki, even leaving her clan's compound with nothing but the cloths on her back in the middle of the night. A move that had greatly angered the Hyuga clan, as well as creating no shortage of rumors and idle gossip that permeated through the village. On top of that, a promising kunoichi by the name of Tenten Higurashi had resigned at the same time, much to her sensei and team's shock, leaving them to scramble for a replacement, simply citing that she had been given a promising opportunity that she couldn't afford to pass by. "Greetings Iruka-sensei, Mizuki-sensei," the Hyuga heiress greeted as if nothing was out of the ordinary. "I trust the two of you are comfortable." "What's going on?" Mizuki shouted. "Where the hell are we?" To answer the latter, Hinata giggled. "You are in the lower levels of the Cerberus facility within Konoha. As to what is going on, well, you two have been selected to partake in an experiment of sorts." What do you mean, experiment?" the scarred Chunin demanded. "It is pretty self-explanatory, Mizuki-sensei." The Hyuga heiress shrugged as if without a care in the world. Reaching into her lab coat, she produced a small remote control-like device. Casually pressing a button on it, 6 syringes filled with an unknown clear liquid and a floating green spring raised from behind the bed that Mizuki lay upon, each poised to penetrate his body at 3 points on each arm. "What you see here is Cerberus's latest accomplishment in bioengineering, the Tyrant Virus or T-Virus for short," Hinata proudly explained. "And you, Mizuki-sensei, get to be our first live human subject. I must admit, I am quite excited to see the results." "You can't do this," Iruka protested, struggling against his bindings. "People will come looking for us." This only earned a giggle from the brunette. "As of 20 minutes ago, the two of you were confirmed dead after a failed attempt to frame one Naruto Uzumaki for the theft of the Forbidden Sealing Scroll," she informed them casually. Both bodies were found burned to a crisp and visually unidentifiable due to messing with one of the forbidden jutsus within the scroll. Tisk tisk tisk, you should know better than to tamper with things of forbidden knowledge. Now, hold still Mizuki-sensei. Hinata grinned as she pressed another button on the odd device she held within her hand, prompting the syringes to sink into his flesh and empty the fluids within his body. This is going to hurt a lot, I promise. Almost instantly, the silver-haired Chunin screamed out in pain as the newly identified T-virus circulated through his system. Fruitlessly, he struggled against his restraints as it felt like acid had entered his bloodstream and was eating away at his flesh, from the inside out. As this happened, the former Hyuga heiress glided over to the unfortunate Mont's bed and withdrew the medical chart that was hanging at the foot of the bed. Producing a pen from her pocket, she proceeded to mindlessly write down various things on it, all the while mumbling things about time of injection and expected rate of transformation. "Why are you doing this, Hinata?" Iruka questioned, averting his eyes from the agony his friend and coworker was going through. "What happened to you? You were such a sweet girl." "Oh, that was an act one put up so that others would underestimate me." Hinata brushed off the latter statement with a scoff. "The why, however, is simple, Iruka-sensei. Boundaries are meant to be broken. And in order to advance in genetic experimentation, we must break those boundaries if we are to push forward." Sounds an awfully like something Nyoka would say. The scared Chunin spat the name in disgust. "How kind of you to notice." Hinata grinned. "She is my mentor after all." Hearing this, Iruka could only gawk at the pale-eyed woman before him, unable to comprehend what he had just heard, as a cold feeling settled into the pit of his stomach. The shy little wallflower that he had practically watched growing up in the village and openly admitted to working alongside Konoha's biggest traitor. Then again, she did state that her meekness was a facade she had put up to deceive those around her. Just how much was she hiding, and where did her true loyalties lie? Swallowing thickly, he met the pale eyes on the former Hyuga heiress, whom was sporting a sinister grin on her face. "Are you going to do the same to me?" he asked, while gesturing with his head towards the now unconscious Mizuki. "Oh, no, no, no." Hinata shook her head while eliciting a chilling giggle. "Though you do play an intricate part of this particular experiment." "Why?" Iruka inquired. "Why us?" "Well, in Mizuki-sensei's case, he made some rather disparaging remarks about Nyoka-senpai which earned the ire of both senpai and my boss, stating in great detail of how she should gladly spread her legs for him after he delivered the scroll." She explained with a sneer of disgust. Only one man would ever have the privilege of touching her senpai in such a manner. "As for you, well, you have greatly upset my boss through your actions over the years." "What do you mean, my actions?" Silently, Hinata produced a tablet-like device from her lab coat pocket and tapped on the screen a few times. As she did so, the room darkened slightly and holographic images of what appeared to be a file of some kind that Iruka recognized as his own. His full name, place of residence, current occupation, and an in-depth detail of his career as a shinobi of Konoha. But what was most surprising to the scarred Chunin was the list of particularly private information about him. Stuff that he could have sworn was off the record. In particular was his recent dealings with Konoha's revered spy master, Jiraiya of the Sannin. Starting just under 10 years ago, you were approached by Jiraiya of the Sannin for a rather unusual assignment. Hinata began in a professional tone, though the expression on her face when she spoke the Mont's name clearly displayed what she thought of the Sannin. In exchange for sabotaging and tampering with Naruto Uzumaki's education and records, you would receive 20,000 ryo monthly. Though since you already despised poor Naruto-kun, senselessly blaming the deaths of your parents on him, the money was just a bonus, wasn't it? Iruka could only look at the former heiress completely stupefied as he tried to wrap his head around just how Cerberus could have such detailed and intimate information about him and no doubt others within the village, and perhaps even beyond. Of course, that arrangement came to a halt 3 years ago when Naruto-kun suddenly dropped out of the academy in pursuit of a more privatized education, didn't it? She smirked, causing the man before her to scowl. Then came your repeated failed efforts to isolate Naruto-kun and persuade him to return to the academy so he could be under your thumb again. I suspect Jiraiya was none too pleased with your failure. What is even more interesting, is that this little assignment of yours was done without the consent of the Hokage, or even the council. Hinata continued, ignoring the monk's scowl. Makes me wonder what else the perverted frog fucker is conspiring in the dark. Hinata Hyuga, please report to the observation deck. A synthetic female voice echoed throughout the room. Hinata Hyuga, please report to the observation deck. Well, it seems that is all the time we have. She shrugged, closing down the holographic images of Iruka's file before moving towards the door. Do me a favor, and keep an eye on Mizuki-sensei. You won't get away with this. Iruka stated defiantly. We'll get out of here, and report everything to the Hokage. Good luck. The pale-eyed beauty giggled before disappearing out the door, allowing for it to lock behind her. Hokage's office. Hiruzen took a deep puff from his tobacco pipe, slowly exhaling the smoke from his nostrils as he mulled over the recent events that had transpired within the last hour. It had all started when one Naruto Uzumaki, whom had abruptly dropped out of the academy 3 years prior, had broken into his office, stolen the sealing scroll of secrets, and severely injured one of his Anbu when the boy made his escape. However, this strongly conflicted with the report that Anbu Neko had given, stating that her team had observed the young man at the Ichiraku ramen establishment, before he departed towards his apartment, which was now located in a rather luxurious complex owned by the Cerberus Corporation. Something that didn't sit well with the aging Fire Shadow. The elder man had purposely placed the boy in that run-down apartment within the red light district to not only allow the villagers to have easy access to the boy to vent their frustrations on, but to also allow his Anbu to easily keep an eye on the weapon as well and to quickly intervene if the mob got too carried away. Now though, with Cerberus's security around the complex, only those that resided there or were given express permission could enter. Then his Anbu had located the charred remains of what was identified as Iruka Yumino and Mizuki Tsuji, along with what appeared to be the mostly burnt scroll, rendering it completely useless and robbing the village of one of its most treasured items. Not to mention the sheer amount of powerful jutsu and techniques that the scroll had contained, now lost. Both instructors at the academy. This only served to corroborate Anbu Neko's report that the Uzumaki was innocent of the crime that had just transpired, making it clear that both Iruka and Mizuki had attempted to frame the young man for the crime. Are you sure that there is no way your team can infiltrate the Cerberus complex? Hiruzen inquired as he turned his attention back to the cat-masked Anbu before him. Knowing that there was extremely little that could be done regarding the scroll and the guilty party that had stolen it, the elder village leader decided to turn his attention back to the Uzumaki. The boy was meant to be conditioned to be the village's scapegoat and weapon to use on Konoha's enemies. He needed to get the weapon back under his thumb, and soon. With their advanced technology, it is virtually impossible to get in unnoticed. Neko responded, though behind her mask she had a scowl etched across her face. Inu's team had attempted to do so shortly after Uzumaki moved into the complex and was immediately caught. Furthermore, we do not know which apartment Uzumaki resides in. Also, it has been increasingly difficult to even approach Uzumaki due to his employment with the Cerberus Corporation. The female Anbu continued, smirking slightly behind her mask. Hiruzen openly scowled at this. Do we know what his position is within the company? The elder man inquired, looking for a way in to potentially sabotage the boy's employment and remove him from the protective umbrella that the corporation provided him. Negative, though we have observed that many of the employees regard him with respect, which suggests that he could be in a position of influence within the company. I see. Hiruzen frowned. Return to your post and report if there are any changes regarding Uzumaki. I have to address the council about what had transpired tonight. Hi, Hokage-sama. Neko responded before disappearing from the office, leaving the elder man alone with his thoughts. It appears the weapon has embedded himself deep within the Cerberus Corporation, and with their resources, there is no possible way they don't know what he holds within him. The elder Hokage mused. Still, an all-out assault on the complex is out of the question, and if Neko's reports are accurate, infiltration is also not an option. The only option is to isolate and subdue the weapon outside of the complex. Inu, he called out. Immediately an Anbu with a dog mask and gravity-defying silver hair appeared before the Hokage in a kneeling position. Rise Inu, and remove your mask. Hiruzen commanded. Without hesitation, the male Anbu member rose to his feet and removed the dog mask he had been wearing, exposing his face, or rather part of it, as nearly half of the Mon's face was hidden behind a black fabric mask that covered his mouth and nose, while his Hite-8 covered his left eye. "I have an important, long-term assignment for you, Kakashi," the old man began. "As you know, the new batch of Genins have just graduated. Among them is Sasuke Uchiha, the sole survivor of the Uchiha massacre. I want you to be his team's Jonin sensei." Kakashi frowned slightly at the idea, not too keen on taking on an entire team, but nodded in acknowledgement nonetheless. "And what of Uzumaki?" the masked Jonin inquired. "With the Cerberus Corporation protecting him, it is virtually impossible to abduct him from the complex. The only option open to us is to isolate him while he is away from Cerberus and subdue him to be reconditioned." Hiruzen explained. "That is why I am going to contact Ryori." "Ryori, isn't he retired?" "Semi-retired," the Hokage corrected. "He has been keeping an eye on the weapon, along with his daughter, though she is unaware." "I see," was all Kakashi could respond with. "Due to how Uzumaki frequents the stand, Ryori has the best chance in subduing our weapon once more." Hiruzen stated, "I will make a request for Yamanaka to concoct a powerful sedative to render the weapon defenseless, long enough for an Anbu team to subdue and transport it to be properly reconditioned, as he should have been. Is there anything else you require of me, Hokage-sama?" "That is all. Be sure to meet your team in a week," the old man instructed. "Now if you will excuse me, I must address the council." Nodding silently, Kakashi departed the office with the Hokage following shortly afterwards. Both unaware of a small object nestled in the upper corner of the room. Unknown location. Dozens of monitors, displaying various key areas of the village such as the Hokage's office, council chambers, and the academy to name a few, lit up the room where a lone individual was seated rather comfortably in a moderate-sized chair behind a rather large desk. In his hands was the very scroll that the two would-be traitors had very generously donated to him. As he did so, the door behind him gave a small hiss before it opened, allowing the light from the elevator flood the room for a brief moment, as well as silhouetting the outline of a feminine figure before the door hissed shut once more. Silently, she moved into the room. Clad in black and dark gray standard Anbu gear, with a porcelain Neko mask hanging loosely from her waist. Reaching the chair that the young man was sitting in, she gently wrapped her arms around his neck and leaned in until her chin was resting on his shoulder. "You did well in there, Yugao-chan." The man smiled, looking up from the scroll, and gave a sidelong gaze at the beautiful young woman. "Did you expect anything less, Naruto-kun?" The now identified Yugao inquired with a slight smirk, her eyes turning up towards a specific monitor that was displaying the meeting between Hiruzen and Kakashi. "The old fool still hasn't realized he has already lost," Naruto commented, seeing the monitor his companion was looking at. "To think he actually believed he could hide my heritage from me." "TCH. The purple-haired woman scowled. "No matter." The blonde Jinchuriki smirked, placing the scroll down on the desk before him. "Let the fool think he has the advantage. It will be all the more enjoyable when he sees all of his machinations come crashing down around him." Cerberus facility. Lower levels, 7 hours later. Mizuki groaned in pain as he coughed up another glob of blood and bile to add to the puddle that was pooling on the floor at the foot of the bed he was strapped to. The Chunin's once healthy complexion was now horribly pale and clammy due to the cold sweat that coated his body. "How are you holding up over there, Mizuki?" Iruka asked from the corner of the room, still confined to his own bed. The silver-haired man groaned. Whatever that bitch injected me with, is fucking killing me." "Hang in there, buddy." The scarred Chunin tried to comfort his friend. "We'll get out of here. Somehow." "And how are we going to do that?" Mizuki weakly shot back. "In case you haven't noticed, we are strapped to these kami-forsaken beds. How the hell do you think we are going to get out of here? What, is the power just going to magically go out and unlock everything for us?" Almost as if to mock the silver-haired man, the lights abruptly went out only to be replaced by low-glowing emergency red lights to dimly light up the room. Simultaneously, soft clicks could be heard throughout the room as the bonds on their respective beds clicked open, allowing Iruka to quickly scramble out of his bed, despite his muscles' protest due to being forced to lay down for so long. "What the hell?" was Mizuki's intelligent response. "Don't question it, let's get out of here," Iruka stated as he nearly slipped in the puddle of refuse below his comrade's bed. Steadying himself, he positioned one of Mizuki's arms over his shoulder and hoisted him out of the bed. Mizuki groaned in protest as he was lifted from the bed, but complied nonetheless. At least as much as his frail body would allow him to, trying not to put too much of his weight on his comrade. Together, the two hobbled over towards the only door leading out of the room. Propping his silver-haired friend up against the wall, Iruka cautiously cracked open the door and peeked outside. Through the dim red glow of the emergency lights, the scarred Chunin could vaguely make out that the hallway was clear of any guards or staff. "Come on, it's clear," he informed the ailing Mizuki as he secured the man once more. "We're going to get out of here, get you to an actual hospital to get whatever that shit the bitch injected you with, and report everything to Hokage-sama." As quickly and as quietly as they could, the two hobbled down the hallway with Iruka keeping watch for any signs of wandering staff or security. Though as they progressed and the increasing lack of evidence of any staff of any kind being present on the floor caused a sense of dread to pool into the pit of the scarred Chunin's stomach. Something's not right, Iruka thought to himself as he slowed to a stop, readjusting the weight of his friend. We should have seen some sort of sign of someone by now. He was snapped out of his musing when Mizuki started coughing violently, prompting him to gently lay him next to the wall. Just as the silver-haired Chunin hacked up another glob of blood and bile, as well as some more solid chunks of something Iruka could not, and did not want to identify. Careful not to step in the freshly deposited fluid on the floor, the scarred Chunin knelt down next to Mizuki. "Hang in there, we're almost out of here," he tried to reassure the silver-haired man, even though he had no idea where the exit was for this Kami-forsaken place. "And no," Mizuki groaned, trying to push the brown-haired man away. Just leave me, I'm only slowing you down." "What the hell kind of talk is that?" Iruka questioned in a harsh tone. "No, we're both getting out of here, now come on." "No, Iruka," Mizuki weakly glared at his comrade. Whatever that bitch put inside me, it's killing me. Which is why we need to get you out of here and into a hospital." The scarred Chunin argued back. "One that isn't involved with Cerberus." At this, Mizuki could only laugh. "A hospital that isn't involved with Cerberus, the lead supplier in medical equipment, I'd sooner believe the demon brat is the Yondaimi's son." He remarked cynically. "No, you need to get out of here. You need to tell Hokage-sama what they did here, and have him bring every available shinobi and burn this place to the ground. Now get out of here." Iruka stood still for a handful of seconds before he cast his eyes to the floor and nodded silently and slowly rose to his feet. Giving his longtime friend and comrade one last look before running off down the hall and taking a left at the corner, making a silent vow to return as quickly as he could with help. Hearing a small hissing sound, Iruka came to an abrupt halt and pressed himself against the wall, trying to hide in the shadows. Unaware of a strange-looking creature with an abnormally long tongue creeping on the ceiling above him. After a few seconds without hearing anything else, Iruka decided to take his chances and continue forth, oblivious to the strange creature that was now stalking him from above. As the minutes seemed to tick by, the scarred Chunin started to feel desperate, having not found a single door that looked like it lead out. In fact, he slowly began to realize that the only other doors and windows he had seen had all been on the interior walls. None were located on the outer walls. Stopping in his tracks, he knelt over and tried to collect his thoughts. Though as he did so, he saw a familiar pool of blood and bile on the floor. Looking up, he recognized this spot as the very spot that Mizuki had told him to leave him. Only now, Mizuki was nowhere in sight, having seemingly left under his own strength if the blood-soaked handprints along the wall were anything to go by. "Mizuki," he called out, only to be greeted with silence. "Damn it." Once more, Iruka trudged forward, this time focusing his search for an elevator or stairwell on the inner walls. Finally, he found a promising door that appeared to go deeper into the interior. Thinking that the elevator may be located in the centralmost part of the floor, he cautiously entered the room. However, upon taking a few steps, he heard the hissing noise once more, this time much closer. Slowly turning, he could only gasp in horror at the sight that greeted him. Blocking the doorway of the room he had just entered was a massive beast standing somewhere around 6 feet tall, maybe 7, with a massive tongue moving around, almost like a snake. Its head appeared to have its brain on the exterior, with a large mouth full of razor-sharp teeth. "What the fuck is that?" Iruka asked out loud. However, this seemed to be a mistake, as the sound of his voice caused the unknown creature to appear to lock onto him and lunge forward. It was only due to years of training and combat experience was Iruka able to avoid a disemboweling strike by the creature's massive claws, though he still did suffer a deep laceration on his back, causing him to cry out in pain. Not wasting any time, the scarred Chunin launched off the floor and bolted out the door, slamming the door behind him. Despite knowing that the locks were not working, he had at least hoped it would slow the creature down, if only a little, to give him a chance to get away. His hopes were dashed as a loud clang echoed throughout the walls, signifying that the door had literally been ripped out of the wall. Taking a chance to look behind him, Iruka could see the strange creature leaping up on the wall and crawling towards him at an alarming speed. Crying out in fright, he turned and ran at full sprint down the hall, and quickly rounded the corner, only to come to a sudden halt as he smashed into the form of an extremely sickly-looking Mizuki who was now wobbling on his feet. "Oh shit, Mizuki," Iruka called out in alarm. "We need to hide, now." Not giving his friend time to respond, Iruka attempted to pull him into one of the adjacent rooms, in hopes of hiding from whatever creature was pursuing him. However, Mizuki would not budge, turning to his friend with a questioning look, only to find the silver-haired man to suddenly lunge towards him, catching him off guard as his already injured back smashed into the wall behind him. "Ah!" he screamed out as Mizuki's teeth sunk into his tender flesh where his collarbone connected to the base of his neck, causing the blood to spray out onto the wall. As it was, the sounds of Iruka's pained cries attracted the attention of the beast, which now slowly stalked towards the prone form of Iruka. Baring its fangs, the massive creature lashed out with its tongue and caught hold of one of the scarred Chunin's legs before snapping it towards the beast. As such, the sudden pull away from Mizuki had caused Iruka's neck to open completely. All throughout the hallways, the sounds of gurgling and wet munching could be heard echoing off the walls. Observation deck. 5 figures stood silently as they observed what had transpired as they peered into the makeshift set that had acted as a laboratory floor. In truth though, there was no escape for Iruka or Mizuki, as there was no way out on their own. Rate of infection seemed to move slower than our other test subjects. Hinata noted, jotting down the notes on her notepad. We'll have to perform further tests to see if it is a species variable or if rate of infection is determined by the individual. Such a sight to see, Nyoka commented with a sinister grin as she observed the damage being done to the now mangled body of Iruka. The liquor bio weapon is truly a magnificent sight to behold when in action. Bastard deserved it. Ino scowled as she looked down her nose at the fully infected Mizuki. Pervert was always trying to look up our dresses in class. Which is part of the reason these two were selected for this particular test run of the T-virus in humans. Naruto stated, both of them have committed great offenses to all of us in some way, shape or form. So what do we do now? Yugao inquired, looking to the blonde male. Have both Iruka and Mizuki chipped? Naruto instructed as a dark grin formed on his mouth. They will be the first of a new wave of bio-weapons for Cerberus. 3 weeks later, so that is 1 order of miso ramen, 2 orders of beef ramen, and a large order of pork ramen to go and 6 orders of kani gyozas. A brown-haired waitress repeated back the order she had just been given from the customer in front of her. Anything else? How about you, tonight? The man gave what he had deemed a seductive grin, but to Ayame, it looked like he was constipated, prompting the brown-haired waitress to roll her eyes in annoyance. Afraid I am going to have to decline, she replied with forced politeness. I know all about your reputation, Asuma Sarutobi. Oh, the bearded Jonin now identified as Asuma quirked an eyebrow, exhaling a stream of smoke from his mouth that had originated from the cigarette he had hanging loosely between his lips. And what reputation would that be? How I can make cute girls like you scream out into the night. Oh, you make them scream all right. Ayame retorted with a slight snort. Scream out in frustration because you are nothing more than a two-pump chump that can't even bring a girl to finish with that micro-sized pecker you call a dick. For his part, Asuma could only shrug in response. He was no stranger to women shooting him down in fashion, and took each blow and insult with stride. It was just part of the game he played. To him, it only made it that more satisfying when he finally achieved his conquest. In the end, it didn't matter to him. Eventually she will cave and give herself to him willingly, and he would have put another notch under his belt before he moved on to his next conquest. A tense silence hung over the ramen stand as Ayame prepared the orders, all the while ignoring the bearded mont's leering. As she prepared the orders, the brunette-haired waitress noticed an anbu with an owl design on their mask approaching the ramen stand. Quietly, the anbu beckoned her father over and gave him a scroll, along with a vial filled with a clear-looking liquid, causing the ramen waitress to narrow her eyes slightly. That can't be good, Ayame thought to herself with a frown, knowing full well that her father still did the odd assignments from the Hokage, most of which pertained to her favorite blonde-haired customer and lover. Turning her attention back to the orders she was preparing, a handful of minutes had passed before she was finished with the orders, and with a forced politeness, she bid the bearded man a good day while muttering under her breath that she hoped for him to contract some sort of horrible venereal disease. I haven't seen a man get taken down that least since the Battle of Wutai, during the Third Great Shinobi War. Tsuki teased his daughter, having witnessed the young waitress savagely turn down the young Sarutobi's attempt to woo his daughter. Couldn't hurt to give him a chance, you know. Pops, you are aware that the only thing that asshole is interested in is getting between my legs to dump his load, right? Ayame retorted with a snort. And after he gets what he wants, he will just move on to his next conquest. Perhaps my little girl can be the special one to tame his wild heart. The elder ramen chef chuckled. Who knows, maybe if he knocks you up it will force him to settle down. That was a very poor attempt at a joke, father. She lightly chastised, shaking her head in annoyance at the elder mont's antics. Being a former shinobi yourself, you know full well that the laws of Konoha would protect that man-whore from assuming any responsibility of raising a child. Tsuki couldn't help but flinch as his daughter held nothing back in regards to how she felt about one Asuma Sarutobi. Besides, he already knocked up some civilian girl in the red light district and all they told her was to abort it. If she chose to keep it, it would be her responsibility, not his. Ayame scowled, clearly none too pleased with how the entire situation had been handled by the governing body of the village. As it had turned out, Asuma had played upon the civilian woman's ignorance of jutsu that shinobi use and had tricked her into believing the seal he had used rendered him sterile. Of course, when she had brought up her pregnancy to the bastard, he had completely brushed her off and ignored her, forcing her to make a very difficult decision. Fortunately for the young woman, Cerberus had lent a hand to give her the support she needed, both emotionally and medically, even started lobbying within the various villages they held influence over, to hold shinobi and kunoichi accountable for unwanted pregnancies that may occur due to their actions. So far, only Konoha had been stubborn about the proposal. Besides Pops, I already have a boyfriend, she revealed. The sound of clattering bowls as they hit the ground echoed throughout the small ramen stand, earning a slight giggle from the brown-haired waitress. What do you mean you already have a boyfriend? Tsuki inquired, shocked at the revelation that his daughter had a boyfriend. And why haven't you introduced the boy yet? How do you know you haven't already met him, and just don't know it yet? Ayame teased with an amused grin. Her father, however, didn't share the same sentiment as he openly scowled at the jest. As for why I haven't introduced you yet, it's because he works for Cerberus and I know how you feel about them. Bah, Cerberus. The elder man all but spat the name in disgust. The semi-retired shinobi had made his thoughts quite clear about how he felt about the corporation, feeling that no entity should have as much wealth or political power that they wielded throughout the elemental nations. Furthermore, to increase his dislike for the company, they were the indirect reason as to why the Hokage had pulled him out of retirement. For unknown reasons, the corporation had approached the young Uzumaki boy with the offer of a privatized education as well as other fringe benefits. The entire thing was far too suspicious for the former Anbu member. Why did Cerberus approach Naruto specifically? Especially in the court of popular opinion, there were far more suitable candidates. The first that came to mind was the village's golden boy, Sasuke Uchiha. While Tsuki didn't think the boy deserved all the special treatment he received, he could not doubt that the Uchiha had natural talent the rest of his classmates lacked. Then there were the other two that had left the academy with the boy, Hinata Hyuga and Ino Yamanaka, both clan heiresses from prominent clans, though he was aware that there was some inter-clan issues with the Hyuga heiress. Something about her being too timid for the clan head and elders' liking. As for the Yamanaka, all he was told was that the blonde-haired mind walker was an avid Uchiha fangirl, so it was surprising to hear that she had left the academy. Lastly, there was Tenten Higurashi, a promising young kunoichi that had shown an aptitude for weapons just starting in her career, only to resign and join Cerberus as well. "So what's that, Pops?" Ayame inquired, breaking the elder mont's musing as she gestured towards the scroll and vial that was still in his hands. "Oh, nothing, just something Hokage-sama wants me to look into when I have the time," Tsuki replied, not revealing the full truth to his daughter about what the village leader had asked of him, knowing that she adored the blonde young man. Hell, if circumstances were different, he would encourage her to pursue the Uzumaki. However, as it were, he knew the Hokage would never allow it unless it was for the betterment of Konoha as a whole. "Let me know when our favorite customer gets here. I have a new recipe I want him to try and see if it gets his seal of approval." "All right, Pops," the young waitress replied, watching as her father disappeared into the back. No doubt to prepare the special ramen dish for Naruto. Shaking her head, Ayame reached into her pocket and pulled out her cellular phone. A relatively new product from the Cerberus Corporation, and pressed a few buttons before bringing the mobile device to her ear. "Hey sweetie," she spoke into the mouthpiece with a grin. Cerberus apartment complex. The blonde-whiskered young man couldn't help but chuckle as he laid his cell phone down on the nightstand next to his bed, before grabbing the pack of cigarettes and Zippo lighter next to where he had set his phone down. Leaning back against the hardwood headboard at the head of the large king-sized bed he was currently lounging on. Pulling out 2 cigarettes, placing both in his lips, he flipped open the Zippo light and lit it with on-fluid motion before lighting both of them. Inhaling deeply before slowly exhaling, allowing the smoke to drift out into the room. As he did so, a slim hand snaked out from under the sheets and began to ghost over his abdomen, trailing its slender fingers across his defined muscles as they continued to ascend up his body. Brushing over his chest area before extending 2 fingers, awaiting the already lit cigarette. Smirking some, Naruto removed one of the tobacco sticks from his mouth and gently placed it between the 2 delicate fingers, prompting the unknown female to pop her head out from under the sheets and move to lounge beside the whiskered blonde, bringing the sheets up to hide her modesty. Her usual short-kept hair now a disheveled mess, and smug grin adorning her face, accompanying her lack of dress was all one would need to deduce the prior night's activities. "Seems the old goat is getting more desperate to get me back under his thumb," Naruto commented after taking a drag from his cigarette. He just had a package delivered to Tsuki, a concoction of some kind, in order to subdue me. No doubt so they could wipe my mind and implant false memories. "A disopropylphenol," the woman stated, naming the chemical compound the Hokage had ordered to be used on the blonde. Hiruzen placed various requests among the Yamanaka, Nara, and Akamiki clans to procure the items required to make it. "And you were going to inform me of this when, Ada-chan?" Naruto grinned, teasing the young woman beside him, which only earned him a playful slap on the shoulder. "If you were not such a beast last night," the now identified Ada mockingly chastised, "you would have noticed the folder I had brought over. I heard a lot of things coming from you last night, and complaints were not among them, my dear." Another playful slap on the shoulder. Chuckling some, Naruto threw the blankets off and got out of the bed, giving his companion a delectable view of his nude form as he walked over to the table the folder lay on. Picking it up, he began to leaf through the pieces of paper. Reading over the contents, quirking an eyebrow in confusion as he read over something particularly interesting. So the old man sent Team 7 on their first C-rank mission, despite them not completing the required amount of D-rank missions. The blonde commented with a snort, having a strong feeling that the mission was doomed to fail. feeling a sense of empathy for the client, who was putting his safety in the hands of an inexperienced genin team. Hell, they haven't even been a team for a whole month. It's a disaster waiting to happen, Ada commented as she removed herself from the bed as well, walking towards him with a seductive sway in her nude hips. All done to appease the Uchiha. Naruto could only scoff at that. The mighty Hokage of the village bowing to the whims of a spoiled man-child, all because his clan got massacred by his older sister one night, nearly 16 years ago when the Uchiha was only 6 years old. Since that day, the village catered to the boy's every whim. Discounted or free products from the various shops and restaurants within the village, privatized training from some of the most elite jonin and anbu. Even further, the boy had never been encouraged to seek counseling after such a traumatic event. Probably the only saving grace is that Hitaki is on the mission as well as the team's jonin sensei. The whiskered blonde commented, exhaling another plum of smoke. That's debatable, Ada snorted. While there is no doubt the man has had an impressive shinobi career, the fact remains that Hitaki has gotten lazy and too reliant on his little stolen memento. Naruto merely grunted in agreement, as he continued to flip through the pages, reading over the information present on the unfortunate client that Team 7 had been assigned to. A simple bridge building from the small country of Nami no Kuni, simply known as Tazuna. No last name, though a rather peculiar title of the Super Bridge Builder. Gato. Naruto spoke the familiar-sounding name out loud without looking up from the paper he was reading. Isn't that the pudgy bastard that tried to take over the Cerberus branch in Kurigakure? Ada could only snort at the memory of the pompous midget with a superiority complex. The smug bastard hard-barged right into their office with an entourage of thugs, stating that he was now in control of the company and that everyone was expected to fall in line. Telling the men that they would need to pay an exorbitant amount of money or other high-valued items as tribute to him. Then telling the women that were present that they now all had the privilege of sweetyayali pleasing him in bed, whenever he desired. The response had been swift and precise. Cerberus security forces had made short work of Gato's thugs and had pursued the pudgy man all the way to his hideout, which was located in the shipping docks, and proceeded to massacre his motley crew. Forcing Gato to flee the entirety of Mizu no Kuni in a small boat, filled with mostly the greedy monks wealthy, as he left his own men to die at the hands of the Cerberus task force. That's him, Ada replied with a scowl. Seems after we chased him out of Kiri, the slimy little bastard set up shop in Nami no Kuni. I would say that even as inexperienced as they are, Team 7 should be able to handle the little prick. Naruto sighed with a frown. But, something in my gut tells me that we're going to have to step in and deal with the pig of a man ourselves. Alright, enough business talk, Ada stated, turning towards the blonde young man with a sultry grin. We're not even on the clock yet, and there are far more satisfying things we could be doing instead. So, join me in the shower. As if to get her message across, she reached out and grabbed him but his lower appendage. Which was all the incentive he needed to drop the folder back down on the table and discard his cigarette in a nearby ashtray. Well, he grinned as he allowed himself to be led by the seductress towards the bathroom. How could I refuse such an invitation? 3 days later, Cerberus headquarters, Konoha branch. 6 figures sat around a large table in a dimly lit room, which was mostly illuminated by a 3-dimensional holographic map of the entire elemental nations, dotted with various Cerberus logos that represented where each of their bases were, accompanied by a photo of the individual in charge of that base, along with other sparse information. The new variant of the Tyrant virus is progressing extremely well, Hinata reported from her seat, right next to Nyoka, whom was looking over the reports of the latest batch of test subjects. We have confirmed that infection rate fluctuates in humans, depending on the individual. A fully healthy specimen can take up to 10 hours until the virus is completely taken over. In other species, like dogs and various amphibious creatures, the transformation is much faster. Jiraiya Baka was foolish to send his toads to spy on you, Naruto-kun. Nyoka giggled from her seat, setting the papers she had been reading down on the table. But at least they make good test subjects. As she spoke, the holographic map changed, now showing various toads with a series of wires and hoses connected to them, monitoring the amount of viruses going in and out of them. Some of the creatures had even begun to mutate. The leg muscles now bulging, almost threatening to rip through the skin. One of the toads had their tongue fully extended, clamped down to a post across the room, showing it to be well over 4 times its body length. Rather than the usual 1/3 of its body length, found in natural toads. Is there a reason why they cannot reverse summon themselves? A man with short, dark brown hair and a full facial beard inquired in curiosity. They are summons after all, shouldn't they be able to just poof away at the first sign of danger to themselves? You are correct, Chris, Naruto stated, turning his attention to the now identified Chris Redfield, older brother of his lover, Claire Redfield. A fact that had earned the whiskered blonde the typical lecture from the older brother about the consequences of hurting his sister. Normally they would be able to reverse summon themselves out of danger, however Danzo and myself have placed numerous Fuinjutsu seals throughout every Cerberus property. The whiskered blonde began to explain, knowing that while the man was a natural in special tactics, reconnaissance, and rescue, he was completely clueless when it came to the shinobi arts. Not only alerting us to their presence, but also preventing them from escaping. Boy, is that perverted frog fucker going to be pissed. A bun-haired girl, known as Tenten Higurashi, stated with a chuckle, prompting a round of light laughter from the other occupants in the room. Only a matter of time before Jiraiya himself comes to investigate. Naruto commented with a sigh, knowing his failure of a godfather would eventually make his grand appearance and try to weasel his way into Naruto's life. No doubt, under the orders of the old bastard. Shaking the thoughts from his mind, he turned his attention to the platinum blonde that was seated off to his left. How goes Project Nemesis? The parasite we genetically engineered to work around the mental degradation common among the walkers, a common side effect to being infected with the T-virus, has shown to be remarkably intelligent. Showing human-level intelligence and self-awareness. Ino explained, an edge of excitement in her voice as she reported the findings of her division's latest project. Theoretically, if we could implant it in a compatible host, it could manipulate said host to handle weapons, open doors, and even do moderate-level problem-solving. I am Sensa, but, Ino sighed, so far, the parasite has violently rejected every host we have placed it in. Originally we thought the walkers we were using were too decomposed, so we attempted it with the freshly turned Iruka and Mizuki. Noika added, since she was helping the young blonde with the project. However, the end result was the same. We've theorized that we may need to find a host that is above peak human physicality. The young blonde woman continued. Someone of a Jonin level, perhaps. Naruto mused for a handful of seconds before turning to Chris. Chris, have our tracker and hunter teams that are out to keep an eye out of Jonin rank missing nin. We are ahead in our monthly quota of potential test subjects, should I have them make it a priority? All right. The blonde agreed before turning his attention to the last individual in the room that was sitting at the other end of the table. How are things progressing in the civilian market, Luis? As you know, we just launched the new line of home entertainment consoles, the GameStation, which has been a surging success amongst the juvenile to adolescent crowd. The man responded with a Spanish accent. Naruto couldn't help but smirk, since he himself owned one of the consoles and had enjoyed it quite immensely. Also, we are attracting more and more consumers with our mobile phones, even some shinobi have taken to using them for their field work. Then there is our medical and security services Cerberus offers to the public. Without a doubt, Cerberus has a presence in every major medical facility within the elemental nations. Luis finished, relaxing back into his chair. Overall, our revenue has increased by over 300% from last quarter. Lastly, our political and military sectors. Well, since we have the Otokage sitting with us, it is safe to assume her village is backing us, 100%. Chris chuckled, earning a round of chuckles from the other occupants. Aside from that, Kurigakure is also backing us, due to our involvement in ending their civil war. Surprisingly, due to your heritage, Iwagakure has also pledged to back Cerberus. Though both Mei and Kuritsuchi have expressed their eagerness for their next injection. The girls present around the table blushed slightly at the innuendo, whilst Nyoka put her slender hand over her mouth and giggled. For her part, Naruto could only sheepishly scratch the back of his head in embarrassment. Both Kumogakure and Omegakure have softened their stance slightly, and have begun to cooperate more for a mutually beneficial goal for both sides. Chris continued. The only village staunchly against Cerberus is Konoha. No doubt due to the general populace viewing themselves as the strongest of all the hidden villages, simply because they think they have won the last couple wars. Tenten snorted, when in reality, they hid behind their allies, allowing Konoha to keep a majority of their shinobi by the end of the war. Well, if they don't want to get on board, then they will be left behind. The whiskered blonde shrugged. Despite my own feelings and clan history with this village, I still offered it the same deal every other village received. This earned a series of nods in understanding between those seated around the table. It was well known amongst them of the blackened history between Konoha and the Uzumaki clan, which had been all but wiped out due to Konoha refusing to aid them when their island was besieged by Iwagakure, Kurigakure, and Kumogakure just before the Third Great Shinobi War had kicked off. The fact that Konoha had known about the impending attack weeks in advance and had still refused to alert Uzushiogakure of the danger, all for the simple fact that Konoha desired to keep its Jinchuriki. And only an Uzumaki could contain the mighty Kyubi. Hence why when Konoha had finally arrived to search for any survivors, which had translated to killing any survivors that had lingered as well as plundering any useful knowledge they could find and claim as their own, only his mother had been rescued. Fortunately, Danzo's root forces had managed to save a majority of the most vital of relics, having great respect for the Uzumaki clan and their accomplishments. It was also double fortunate that his own mother didn't fall for the Konoha will of fire indoctrination that the village had implanted in nearly all of its citizens, having already a strong distrust of the village, since she found it too convenient that they had shown up after her village had been sacked, and even more suspicious that she had been the only survivor they had conveniently found. It was these doubts and suspicions in Konoha's true motives that lead the surviving Uzumaki in founding the Cerberus Corporation with like-minded allies, both within and outside the village from the shadows. Building it into the corporate empire it is today. Has there been any change in your mother's condition, Naruto-kun? Ino inquired with a look of concern etched upon her face. Tsunade-chan said that she is showing more rapid brain patterns, indicating that she is becoming more and more aware of her surroundings. Naruto replied with a slight smile, knowing that any day now his mother could wake for her coma. In the meantime, Karen-chan has been watching over her when Tsunade is not around. Anyways, Hinata-chan, Ino-chan, and Ten-chan. The blonde turned his attention towards the three mentioned young women, prompting each to give the young man their rapt attention. 3 days ago, the old bastard made another move on me. I want you three to watch out for one another. While he may not know of our relationship, I wouldn't put it past the old goat to target you three simply out of familiarity. Since both Tenten-chan and I were in the same orphanage, and Ino-chan and Hinata-chan were in the same class as me. Suppose that should go double for me, since the clan elders are still pissed that I left before they could brand me. Hinata sighed, before shrugging her shoulders in an uncaring manner. It wasn't like the old fossils could do anything. Her father had already publicly denounced her as heiress of the Hyuga clan. It wasn't her fault that the arrogant pricks thought that they were above Konoha clan laws. Well, you did disappear in the middle of the night, Chris pointed out with a slight chuckle. Only after that sperm donor that calls himself my father publicly disowned me, and stripped me of my status of clan heiress. The former heiress clarified with a smirk as she leaned back into her chair, propping her feet up on the table. Only to get her feet swatted down by Nyoka, whom gave her a scolding look. Daddy was actually relieved that I dropped out of the academy, and fully supported in my working here. Ino commented, before she frowned. Though he did warn me that the civilian side of the council has been pushing harder for the Uchiha to be placed in the Clan Restoration Act. Due to being the Yamanaka clan heiress, they can't force me into it, but they may try to target Hinata-chan, since she is technically a civilian now, and Ten-chan. Something to be on the lookout for. Naruto nodded. Speaking of this whole CRA business, Naruto, Chris's face gained a mischievous grin. How do you plan to choose who will walk down the aisle with you first? Mud wrestling, was the blonde's quick reply. Winner takes all. So what you're saying, Nyoka smirked. is that you want all of us in string bikinis wrestling each other in the mud with perhaps some accidental nudity, and the winner not only becomes your first wife, but head wife as well. Silence hung over the room as the other two men sported healthy blushes at the mental image, though Chris did shoot a mild glare towards the whiskered blonde due to the fact that his own sister would also be involved as well. Meanwhile, each of the ladies present glanced between one another, seemingly to be sizing each other up, a grin spread across each of their lips. However, a knock at the door disrupted the festive mood between the six. Seconds later, a slender blonde woman entered the room, wearing a white tied-up halter top with a pop collar that stopped just below her, leaving her flawless flat stomach exposed. The top leaving a generous amount of her cleavage exposed. A pair of white, skin-tight denim pants with a burgundy-colored studded belt, and a pair black-heeled boots. A black choker with a fox embroidered in the center wrapped firmly around her neck. I apologize for interrupting, but a woman came in, insistent on seeing you, Naruto-kun. The woman stated as she entered the room. To see me, the whiskered blonde quirked an eyebrow. Odd that someone outside Cerberus would know to ask for me specifically. She didn't ask for you by name, only that it was urgent that she speak to whoever was in charge. The woman clarified. She seemed rather desperate. I see, thank you Ashley-chan. Naruto acknowledged. Can you show her to my office? I will talk to her there. Of course Naruto-kun. The now identified Ashley replied, giving the blonde a small wink before leaving the room to carry out the request given to her. If there is nothing else, I guess that draws this meeting to a close. The blonde stated as he pushed himself up from his seat, gathering up the small pile of folders and documents that were sitting in front of him, prompting the others to also get up from their positions at the table and file out the doorway. Suppose I shall go talk with this woman, and see what is going on. Just be careful that this isn't some sort of trap set up by the old man. Chris warned as he stopped at the doorway, not putting it past the village leader to use such an underhanded tactic to lure out the Jinchuriki. The thought had crossed my mind. The blonde admitted before shrugging. But I doubt it. The old bastard only knows that I am employed by Cerberus, not my exact position, and this woman requested to speak with whoever was in charge. With that, the two men left the room and parted ways. Chris splitting off to head to the firing range to keep his sharp shooting skills sharp, and Naruto towards his office to meet with this mystery woman. It didn't take the blonde long to work his way through the Cerberus headquarters, and reach his office, which was located 2 floors above where they were having their meeting. When he arrived to his office, Naruto was greeted by the sight of a woman looking to be in her mid to late 20s with long indigo-colored hair, sitting nervously on his couch. She wore a short-sleeved pink shirt with the end of the sleeves and the collar being a red color, as well as a long flowing dark blue skirt that stopped just past her knees. Without a doubt, the whiskered blonde would admit that the woman before him was rather attractive. The way she fidgeted with her fingers while impatiently tapping her foot on the floor while she was waiting told him that this woman was no Kunoichi. I was told you needed to see me, miss, Naruto spoke as he fully entered the room, causing the woman to jump up from the couch in fright. Dropping the folders off on top of his desk, he turned his attention towards the woman. Sorry. The woman bowed slightly, after she had collected herself. My name is Tsunami. Naruto Uzumaki, head of Cerberus. Naruto introduced himself, gently taking her hand and lightly kissing her knuckles, causing the poor woman to blush slightly. Ashley-chan told me that you needed to speak with me. Ah, yes, Tsunami replied, shaking the shock of the young man before her was the head of the massive Cerberus Corporation. Not to mention how much of a gentleman he was. Recently my father hired a team of shinobi from this village, but I don't have the confidence that they will keep my father safe. Naruto frowned at that, as he concluded that this woman before him was the daughter of the bridge builder that Team 7 had been assigned to. The one with black hair is always going on about Uchiha this, and Uchiha that, as if expecting the entire world to bow down before him, simply because of his name. The blue-haired woman exasperated, letting out some much-needed venting. And the pink-haired girl, she spends all of her time fawning over the Uchiha instead of actually watching over my father like she is supposed to be doing. And don't even get me started on their supposed teacher. The lazy bastard openly reads porn in front of my son, and lounges around all day, doing nothing to help his students, though he clearly favors the Uchiha, which has only served to make the smug little shit even more egotistical. Feel better? Naruto asked with a slight chuckle, earn an embarrassed blush from the woman. Forgive me, I don't usually use such language. Tsunami bowed at the waist, showing her regret of using such language. It's just that, I am so worried that my father may not survive the completion of his bridge. That is why I came to Cerberus, in hopes of hiring one of your security teams. I don't have much money, she began, her fingers nervously playing with the hem at the bottom of her shirt. But I can pay you in others ways. Once finished, she shakily began lifting her shirt, exposing her bare stomach, showing that despite being a mother, her skin was silky smooth and nary a stretch mark to be seen. However, she was stopped just short of exposing her S, when Naruto gently took her hand and gently guided it down to lower her shirt. Tsunami-chan. Naruto sighed, giving her hands a reassuring squeeze. You are a very beautiful woman, and under any other circumstance I would be honored to accept your offer. But you shouldn't have to offer your body as payment. It's just, tears began to stream down her cheeks. I know, the blonde interrupted, pulling her into a comforting hug. You worried about your family, and are willing to do anything to ensure their safety. An admirable trait and one that I can respect. The two stayed like that for a handful of moments, as Tsunami cried into his chest, all the while the whiskered blonde caressed her back in a comforting manner. After she had calmed down, Naruto guided her over to the couch, allowing her to sit down before moving over to his desk, and picking up the phone. Dialing his intended number. Chris, prep Shadow Fox team and have them gather at the helipad in 15, geared and ready go. He instructed once the man had answered the call. We're heading to Nami no Kuni, expect hostiles and a potential hostage situation. Roger that. Came the voice on the other end before it hung up. Well, shall we, Tsunami-chan? He turned to ask the blue-haired woman, whom had an expression of shock on her face. But, I can't pay. We will discuss something more suitable on the way. Naruto smiled. Something that does not involve you giving your body. Thank you, she smiled, following the blonde out of the office. Hokage's office. It had not been a good week for the aging village leader. First and foremost, he had failed once again to subdue the weapon when the boy had arrived at the ramen stand. Chuki had prepared the Naruto special, as the chef had ironically named it, with the sedative the Anbu had delivered prior that day. However, the entire plan became unraveled with the chef's daughter, whom was keeping the weapon distracted while her father prepared the dish, turned and crashed into her father, dumping the entire bowl onto the floor. If Hiruzen believed in such a thing, he could have sworn that Kami herself was interfering with his plan to subdue the village's weapon. The other incident that was giving the elder man a headache was the Hyuga situation. 3 years ago, Hiyashi made the grievous error in publicly disowning his eldest, allowing the young woman to simply walk out of the Hyuga estate without consequence before they could put the caged bird seal upon her. Since then, the Hyuga clan head had been harping on him to find a loophole in the Konoha clan law that is protecting the estranged Hyuga. It only complicated matters further when the man had learned that the young woman had joined with Cerberus as an assistant to one of the corporation's top scientists. Though which scientist, he didn't know for sure. What he did know was that with Hinata Hyuga being with Cerberus, made her virtually untouchable since the corporation was backed by the Fire Daimyo and his family, and thus any movement against an employee of Cerberus would be seen as an attack on the Fire Daimyo himself. I'll have to contact Jiraiya again, and see if his toads have turned up anything we can use. Hiruzen thought to himself. The elder man's musing was cut short from the sound of a rapid chopping coming from outside the office window. Turning his gaze towards the window, he saw one of the large vehicles that Cerberus used to quickly move about the elemental nations taking off from their rooftop. However, what caught his attention was a whiskered blonde he desired to subdue suited up in a standard Cerberus combat-ready outfit, sitting at the doorway of the helicopter, as he learned it was called. Almost as if Kami herself was mocking him for his constant failures of molding the young man to be the village's weapon. He watched as the helicopter ascended and then turned, heading northeast. A scowl etched upon his withered face as he watched it disappear over the horizon. To be continued. I hope you enjoyed this story. Also remember to subscribe and like this video. See you in the next video.